The other day in political philosophy, I was talking with my students about trade-offs. We were talking about convenience and other ethical constraints on action. Oftentimes, we're faced with the following kind of choice. I might want to do something because I think that it would be good to do. I might want to ride the bus because I think it would be better to ride share than to use my own car. But on the other hand, using my own car is a lot more convenient. And so if I gave up using my own car, I would have to give up something that's very convenient for something that's very inconvenient, even though in some ways it might be better. We were wondering about trade-offs of this kind, and the students were asking questions like, how do I know when it's incumbent upon me to actually give up something that's convenient for the sake of what's important? And in the course of this conversation, one of the things that I pointed out to my students is that our sense of what is convenient, and inconvenient for that matter, is often relative. It's often relative to the routine that we've developed, our current habits, all kinds of things that are going on in our lives, activities, relationships, and so on and so forth. So when we're thinking about this question of when do I need to give up something that in this moment seems much more convenient than the alternative, we have to think very seriously about how we might incorporate the alternative into our lives in a new way so that in fact it's not so inconvenient. An example of this from my own life is the case of sharing a car with my wife. So my wife and I, we used to have our own cars. Now we just have one car that we share. At first, that was very inconvenient. It was inconvenient primarily because I was used to thinking about transportation on the assumption that I had my own car. And so I could simply drive where I wanted to when I had the time. So when I was thinking about going to the grocery store, for instance, I didn't have to plan too much in advance. I just could figure, well, I've got some time now. I'm not doing anything else. I've got a car, so I can take my car over to the grocery store. That was very convenient. When I switched to sharing a car with my wife, we both decided we wanted to do this because, on the one hand, it would be much cheaper for us. We'd save a lot of money, so that was a good reason to switch. But also, we thought we would use this car more efficiently if we were sharing it. We would drive less, and we would try to use other forms of transportation more. It would be a kind of built-in structural reason for using other forms of transportation. And it's true that since then, I have, for example, used the bus much more than I did before when I had my own car. As I say, at first, it wasn't that convenient. There were some obstacles to doing things that we needed to do, like getting groceries, because we were sharing this one car. But as I also say, that was primarily because we didn't come out of situations where we were sharing cars. We each had our own cars for many years, and we weren't used to thinking in terms of sharing a car. But once we invested some time and energy thinking through how to share a car and planning our lives around it and incorporating it into our routine, it stopped being inconvenient. Now it doesn't seem inconvenient to share a car, even though at first it did seem inconvenient. The point of that story, like the point of telling my students, is just that what seems convenient is relative to our overall life situation. And likewise, what seems inconvenient is relative to our overall life situation. In some cases, there are tasks or goals that we might have that are absolutely inconvenient, we might say. But in many cases, that's not true. In many cases, the question of whether an alternative habit or an alternative activity, one that we're thinking about incorporating into our life, whether that's convenient or not will depend. It will depend on what kind of planning we've done, what kind of routine we have, what habits we currently have, and whether we're willing to change those habits to do things differently. And so our sense of whether something is convenient or not can change a lot over time, and what at first seems very inconvenient can come to seem in the end not too inconvenient at all.